Brazil's Congress has voted to impeach President Dilma Rousseff over allegations she manipulated state funds ahead of the last elections. It's an embarrassing blow for the former left-wing guerrilla fighter who had promised to combat corruption during her campaign. She's pledged to fight the allegations, which she calls tantamount to a coup. The newsmaker's Randolph Nogel reports.
A political storm has erupted. Public anger is seething, and the future of Latin America's largest country and economy hangs in the balance. Brazil's president, Dilma Rousseff, is fighting for her political life.
Ao contrário do que uns anunciaram.
Unlike what some are saying, the end has not begun. We're at the beginning of the battle, a long, slow battle.
And the outcome may determine the fate of her left-wing Workers' Party, which has been in power since 2002. But is the contempt for her and the hope for her downfall solely about the allegations she faces, or a public indictment of the political system itself? It appears Brazilians' tolerance for politicians on the take may be coming to an end. On paper, Dilma Rousseff faces impeachment for an alleged cover-up. She's accused of hiding the scope of the government's deficit during her re-election campaign 2 years ago. But protesters have focused their anger on the wide-ranging embezzlement scandal involving the state oil company Petrobras. Rousseff was the chairwoman of Petrobras during the years the corruption took place, but she hasn't been directly linked to the scandal. The scheme implicated almost all of Brazil's major political parties and exposed the scale of the country's corruption problem. The commission to impeach Rousseff has 65 members. More than half of them, 37 in all, face charges of corruption or other serious crimes. 303 of 515 members of Brazil's lower house of Congress are in a similar situation, as are 49 of 81 Brazilian senators. The irony of Rousseff's political opponents prosecuting her on charges similar to the ones they face is not lost on voters. Many want the architect of her political demolition, Eduardo Cunha, gone as well. He's been indicted on Petrobras-related charges. But the public's censure of Rousseff is not just about corruption, but also the failure of her ruling Workers' Party to lift Brazil out of a deepening recession. When Rousseff was elected in 2011, she was one of the most popular leaders in the world. 92% of Brazilians supported her then. 61% want to see her go now. In the interim, economic growth has reversed. Brazil's economy contracted by 3.5% last year. Unemployment is at 10%, with youth unemployment double that figure. And last year, Brazil's currency fell as much as 30% against the dollar. For those who see Rousseff's political rivals as equally corrupt, the pretext of a faltering economy is surely enough reason to back her impeachment. The outrage being seen on the streets is the manifestation of a perennial fault line in Brazilian politics: inequality. President Dilma Rousseff's survival may ultimately not be determined by the allegations she faces, but by the economic tide. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Austin, Texas, to discuss whether Brazil can recover from yet another corruption scandal is Reggie Thompson. He's a Latin America analyst at Stratfor. Thanks for joining us again, Reggie. These numbers are fascinating. The lower house, 367 votes to 137. That's resounding in terms of that vote for her impeachment. But then again, these guys are not squeaky clean, are they? They're pots and kettles and glass houses everywhere. 37 of the 65 on the impeachment commission face charges of corruption and other serious crimes. What is going on in Brazil? Are they all corrupt?
So it's notable that very many of the members of the impeachment commission and many of the congressional members that have been pushing for Dilma Rousseff's impeachment over the past year really have been involved in some sort of corruption or another. There's individuals like Michel Temer, the vice president, who could potentially succeed Dilma Rousseff if the impeachment process goes through the Senate, he is accused of receiving illegal funds from some of the construction firms involved in the Petrobras scandal, and of taking kickbacks. And this is really a process that could really come back to harm him later on in the form of an electoral court ruling expected later this year or early next year. But there are other individuals such as Eduardo Cunha, the president of the lower house, also allegedly involved in these corruption scandals. So really, you've got a situation where these opposition parties, after more than a decade of Workers' Party rule, sensed a weakness with Dilma Rousseff due to the faltering economy and also due to her party's involvement in this corruption scandal. Really, they sensed that Dilma was really getting a black eye from this political scandal, and they moved against her. Now, legally, there is a rationale for carrying on with her impeachment. After all, a court ruling last year ruled that the fiscal irregularities committed by the government of Dilma Rousseff in previous years were criminal in nature. However, there is the perception in Brazil and abroad among other Latin American states that this is really an opportunistic political move taken by other parties, sensing a weakness on the part of the Workers' Party.
Let's take stock of the Workers' Party for a moment. As you mentioned, they've been in power for over a decade, came to power in 2003. Can we say that they did a great job for a period of time and then presided over a weakening economy and succumbed to the temptation of corruption?
So it's notable, it really depends on who you ask, because for many ordinary Brazilians, obviously, some of the social programs enacted during the first Workers' Party administration, the one under Luis Inácio da Silva, that was, the expansion of the social programs really was beneficial for many poorer Brazilians. Now, really, it's a situation of being in the right place at the right time for corruption, as far as a lot of the ruling Workers' Party officials were concerned, simply because Brazil was experiencing the greatest oil windfall really in its history at this point, and there were a lot of Brazilian, both public and private sector officials with plenty of opportunities for corruption, and they took those opportunities.
Final question for you. You mentioned this isn't like other Latin American countries. I wonder, in a corruption sense, how does Brazil compare to its neighbors?
So really, that's a tricky question to some level, because a lot of corruption obviously goes unnoticed, unreported, because of in the interest of the people that are carrying it out. Obviously, it's not in their interest to bring it to public light. But I mean, Brazil, what the scandal showed us is that Brazil was deeply affected by corruption at many levels of government. Compared to other countries, Brazil has been better about, in recent past, since the Petrobras scandal has been uncovered, it has been better at prosecuting the major cases of corruption than other countries. For example, just to compare it regionally to Mexico, many corruption scandals have popped up, not to the level of the Petrobras scandal, but they haven't really been prosecuted with the same vigor as the prosecutors in Brazil. Venezuela is another example. There have been many incentives in national economic policy really incentivizing corruption at higher levels, and nothing has really come of it. So Brazil, just by default, really by the way they have carried out the Lava Jato investigation, they have been doing a much better job than their neighbors of combating corruption.
Reggie, always good to get your analysis. Reggie Thompson joining us there. Thanks.